no matter what, fighting for the right to recover. This pioneer found that the desire to stop using wasn't the only requirement for membership in Birmingham, NA, but that wasn't going to stop him from bringing the message to the sick and suffering. So I would like very much to introduce Harold S., who will be interviewed by Ron M.
You know, I have the honor today of introducing you to Harold S. And, you know, after I've known Harold for 31 years. I met Harold in a service capacity. 31 years ago, Harold was involved with myself, and we were basically starting a meeting in the oldest African-American city in the United States of America, which is in Edenville, Florida, which is right outside Orlando. But when I met Harold, I had spent some time in Bessemer, Alabama, with a friend who owned a business in Birmingham. And Harold was, I found out that Harold was instrumental in starting Narcotics Anonymous in Birmingham, and he had roots there. You know, you're going to meet a man today who has just has so much rich history from the days of the dogs and the fire hoses and all those things in Alabama when they would literally beat African Americans in the street. And Harold was introduced to all of those things as a kid. And he went back there to achieve recovery. But one thing that, and he probably won't share on these things, but Harold had chemotherapy yesterday. But he really wanted to be here and carry this message and let you know about the history of what it was like. He has the desire to do this. When you hear his story, you hear also just overcoming so many challenges that all of us experience in our recovery. But without any more from me, Harold, can you come in and introduce yourself and let us know what brought you to Narcotics Anonymous, and you know what was your introduction to Narcotics Anonymous? How did you arrive on the scene, and what made you want to be a part of this fellowship? Harold?
Hey family, I'm Harold, and I am a great recovering addict. Can
Hello,
y'all
Harold.
hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Harold.
You know, thank you for being my host. You know, as a kid, my brother and sister went to Alabama State in Montgomery in 1965, and me and my mom traveled on the back of the bus, as a lot of us know, up there every year for homecoming, Thanksgiving. And I watched, and it was shared, I watched a lot of the way the whites treated blacks where I was from, and the way they treated up there was totally different. And as a kid, I didn't quite understand that. My mom was one of those people who didn't talk a lot. But you know, I went there every year. Then I started going twice a year. And as time went on, I got separated. You know, I joined the military, tried college, joined the military. And then things got crazy. You know, they didn't get crazy. I married my first wife in '79 after I got out the military. But you know, and then things really got crazy. I started doing more drugs. I went to school for roofing. You know, I am a worker. I do believe in working. You know, I found out I was working for a dope man, and you know, one of the things that got rough was my circle. There was about 5 of us started either going to jail, getting killed, or they just stayed out there. And in November '84, I thought I was tired. And I put that same pistol I carried in the street under my chin and pulled the trigger. And my nephew, and thank God, you know, my nephew was coming to the hospital, putting me in a wheelchair. We go down to a construction area. We smoke. He take me back to the hospital room and put me back in bed like nothing happened. You know, and we talk about how powerful the disease of addiction is before we come in and find out that we really got a lot of work to do. You know, I went back to work after they checked me out of the room. They checked me on the psych ward, and I was in a padded cell for about 10, 15 days, seeing how it really felt to be crazy. And I got out of there and started back using again. You know, in May of '85, I started having seizures. I walk around with a bullet in my head, 38 years this year. And I didn't know how to be grateful. I didn't know how to stop using. I lost a real good job that I went to school for. And, you know, things just kept spiraling downhill. You know, I'm using, I'm having seizures in the dope hole. I'm having to go from a high-paying job to a minimum wage job, still having seizures. And then January of '86, I went and told my mom I was tired. You know, at first, before that, I went to Alabama and Montgomery to live with my brother. But I took I took 2 glass pipes with me. I wasn't going to use them, but it was like souvenirs. And that didn't work. But when I went back in January, and I went to my mom, and I told her I was ready. And because my brother knew a lady that was involved with treatment. And they put me on the bus with nothing. And I went back to my brother's. And in January, I was introduced to detox because I was from another state in York, Alabama, called the Alpha House. And the group counselor just happened to be in AA. And he was going around the room listening to us. And he was talking about his own addiction to alcohol. You know, when I left detox, they called from Alethea House, the treatment center in Birmingham, and they had a bed. My mom had to drive from Florida to York, Alabama, but my sister drove her, and they drove from York to Birmingham. Because if I went, they wanted me to come straight from the detox center to the treatment center. And I was introduced, like a lot of the ladies were sharing, from AA. They was bringing H&I in on one night. We were going to both fellowships during the week, and Narcotics Anonymous was coming in. And I kept focusing on who is an addict. I kept focusing on what you want to do about your problem and how we can help. And I still carried a lot of anger issues for the state of Alabama. But my counselor, I struggled with her in the beginning. At first, I wouldn't even accept her because she was a female. And I didn't want no female telling me nothing. But it got back to the director, and he gave me an ultimatum: either leave or let her be my counselor. And I ain't got to tell you what the choice was. Because I sit here 36 years later, still clean. But she and I got deeply involved. She broke her anonymity. She was a recovering addict, and she was going to AA because, like it was shared, a lot of, NA at the time was predominantly white, except for the treatment vans. People coming to get papers signed for probation, and back then they did not have to sign your papers because of anonymity. And so as time went on, I met my sponsor, who was in AA, and I thank God for James today, and may he rest in peace. But he told me after you leave treatment, I'll sponsor you only if you get into service work. And that was all right with me, but I had to realize for a minute. But after I realized I was going to a Narcotics Anonymous fellowship that still had a lot of racism. And as I shared with Ron and my sponsor, The first area I went to, I got in a fight because I was called a nigger in the area. And that didn't sit well. I went across the table. And I went to my sponsor that evening, and we talked about it. And I told him I ain't going back. He said, yes, you are. And I thank God for that, because we needed to stay, other than coming on treatment van and going to leave treatment and go to AA. And over there, like the lady was sharing, you didn't talk about drugs in AA because they didn't consider alcohol as a drug, But he'll let me come over there from time to time, and he would come. How he did H&I at our facility. But like I said, after I got out of treatment, I got involved with Narcotics Anonymous, like he told me to. He told me that I was going to do service work if I want him to be my sponsor. And he told me that we were not going to do step work. We were just going to do step one and leave it and just service. And back then, all you had was 9 months, you could carry a service position in Birmingham. And so I did a lot of meetings. And I would never accept a ride to the meeting. I'd always walk to the meetings. And I didn't know, I met some good white. I met about 3 or 4 good white people that saw me on a regular basis. Thule, Susie, and Lawrence. They really took me under their wing after they saw I was dedicated. Because I did a lot of H&I meetings. Other people stopped coming, and I did them, and I do the H&I meeting by myself. I take the IPs that we had, and that's what I did. And it bothered me at first, but like my sponsor then told me, you keep doing it. He took me to that IP. What do you want to do about your problem and how we can help? And the key word is we. And after we started seeing me come to the meetings on a regular basis, sharing in meetings on a regular basis, doing service work, it became more and more clear on a lot of Blacks started coming to the meeting and staying, listening. They would never do a whole lot of talking, but because I was instrumental, they see me, they know he, him, we, him. And they started staying. Instead of going to AA on a regular basis, they started coming over there to NA. And that was instrumental, because I got burnout, working, going to meetings, and I burned myself out. And me and my sponsor, he gave me a book called Burnout Syndrome. But one of the things that really touched me was seeing exactly how powerful disease is. I was telling Ron, I was working, in the Birmingham steel factory making lawnmower parts. And the machine I was working on, it was a night shift. It had smoke coming out the end of the pipe. And it's a press, it's a drill press. And when it come down, it pauses. And it came down on my finger because my focus was on the smoke coming out the end of that pipe. Just like it used to come out to fill up a glass pipe. And when it came down, it bust my finger wide open. And I still deal with that split in my finger today. Because this thing is truly powerful. Our literature talks about the disease of addiction affects all areas of our lives. Areas I dealt with back then, I still got areas to deal with today. Illnesses, I deal with illnesses today. But one thing is clear, and I did a lot of work on this in treatment, and I did a lot of work after I got out of treatment and started doing some step work, I had a lot of issues that I never dealt with. You know, like I say, my mom, we never talked. My sisters and brothers, we never talked. Come to find out, all four of us got all different daddies, you know. And this thing is truly powerful, and it needs daily work. And we got to keep it real simple. You know, I know for me, you know, I was talking to my wife for today, and I was telling her, you know, this thing has shook me. I met her in college, and then we got separated for years and years and years. And I started going through different, like I say, going through different things. But when I came in the rooms, the program was instrumental. You know, my total focus was on keep it simple. You know, and for me, that's what I have to do even today. I have to keep this thing real simple for me. You know, I hear people talk about they done went through the 12 steps in a year. I just look at them. How you done went through the 12 steps in a year and you 40 years old? You know, so I don't say nothing, you know, because I'm one of those that I don't believe in forcing change on anybody. You'll change when you're ready to change, or you'll go back out. And I was telling my wife, I got some friends in prison that'll never get out. I lost some friends during my using days. I lost some good friends after I got clean. I lost my best friend, and he came to my house in '96 and asked me what happened. And I told him I had to let him go because he was still using, you know. And one of our IPs, it talks about what are you willing to do to change? Well, everything, because I was tired. That dope life was killing me. You know, I had kids coming into this world. Two of them were with me. One was 8, one was 10, and 84 when I tried to kill myself. You know, today I still deal with that oldest one. You know, I still deal with the next oldest one. You know, the last two I got after I got in recovery. You know, back in the day, the lady was talking about men sponsoring women. Well, we had to back then. You know, if we want what we got. And then later on down the years, I met some women who was working programs, and I told them women, see, it's time for you to go. You know, because I had some, like I heard somebody share about being an NA hoe. Well, my sponsor wouldn't let me bother no women in NA. He told me y'all just as sick as I was. And I had to accept that. So I started messing with the women outside of fellowship. He said, but what you doing? I said, well, you told me don't bother women in the fellowship. But you know, here's one experience that I do truly remember. You know, when I was doing service work, I would leave the regular meetings on Friday nights and go to the clubs, order me a soda and hold it in my hand. Well, one of his friends saw me in the club. So he asked me, he said, what were you doing? Well, it was that smoke-filled environment. You know, in the club, you know, clouds smoking, you know, and that's how it was in the meetings. You know, they were smoking hard in the meetings. And I ain't never smoked. But I set up chairs, I made coffee. You know, I did my H&I commitment, you know, because that was the only commitment I had. And in '88, there was a guy used to always ask me did I need a ride to the meeting. And I tell him, no, I'll meet you there. You know, because one thing we do, we tell people, you get to the meeting, we'll give you a ride home. Just to see how willing you are to go to that meeting. You know, I tell my sponsor, he sit up front. You know, either sit up front or sit halfway. Because sitting in the back of the room reminds me of sitting on the back of the bus. I'm done sitting in the back. Because I really want to stay clean today. I really want other blacks to stay clean today. But like I said, I don't force this thing on anybody. The lady shared is shown in the way we live. I've dealt with car accidents. I got screws in both hips, rod in one leg, meningitis in 2011 after 25 years. They don't know where it came from. I don't know where it came. I got glaucoma in both eyes. I'm legally blind. I got 10% sight. I got a permanent hole in my throat, so I'm constantly running out of breath. I got one speed. I've got a 4-wheel walker that's with me for life. Because I refuse to go back. I count my blessings every day because it's just one of them things that we do. Because I've been called a nigga in Birmingham. I was called after I got all right with that first going across the table. I had a few times I was called a nigga, but I was all right. I said, "You leave. I ain't leave. You leave me because I ain't going nowhere. I'm here to stay. I'm here to show other blacks that this is where we need to be. One addict can best understand and help another addict." And like I say, I was mad at God for a while there. Because I used to ask him all the time, I mean, why you got me back up here knowing I don't like the state of Alabama, period? Because of what I saw from 65 to 75. But God, my God, got a sense of humor. And he sent me back there to start and get us in these rooms. And today, thank God that Terrence came in 88 and stayed. Because he was one of the men that used to always ask me, "Man, you need a ride?" I said, "No, I'll see you when you get there." And he's still instrumental in Birmingham. Him and Errol and a few others. Because this is, man, we've been blessed. We do things today. I do. I enjoy conventions. I met Motorcycle Ed at Serenity in the Mountains in Gaston. And there was a biker. I'm like, what all these motorcycles out here for? But I got there. Because I had, in my brain, I had a thing against motorcycle people. And they'd all have on these vests. But he shared a real powerful message. But he said, he didn't care. You leave, I'm staying. They were clean. There was a motorcycle gang that was clean. And it gave me that much more inspiration to stay. Because this is a beautiful way of life. When I go to conventions, I go on the first day and I sit in the lobby. When I had sight, I sat in the lobby. And when I lost my sight, I still sit in the lobby. Because we do support each other that really want this thing. And for me, I still don't force it. I let people know. They told me, "Man, you lost your sight. You still come to me?" Yes. I still do service work. I still share. If I need to chair a meeting, I'll get somebody to sit next to me. Because I can see a little bit. Because I count my blessings. I've been blessed with a handheld reader. I've been blessed with a desktop reader. Because look at all the people that lost their sight and still come to me. I was diagnosed with cancer in 2020. Oh well, where the doctors at? They came back in another area. It's past January. After I celebrated 36 years on the 10th of January. On the 15th of January, I couldn't even walk. I had to humble myself. My doctor didn't want me to go in a wheelchair. He wanted me straight out. So they'd have to bring the stretcher in my house and roll me to the treatment facility, roll me back home. Talking about humbling experiences with time clean. We just don't use. We lock in our brain the enjoyment part. And like I said, I love conventions, because that gives us, ain't nothing like sitting in a billion-dollar hotel and and thinking about where you came from. I never dreamed it'd be this good. In '88, I also ran into Lawrence, who was instrumental, saw me, and he asked me that I want to start a meeting. And I read. And I started the Phoenix group. And it came, and he told me, see, we do this together. He said, now we're going to have to bend the rules a little bit. But we, at our first convention, we did a T-shirt. And it went over real well in '88. So this is what we do. We don't use, we get deep into the steps, and don't let nobody rush you through the steps because they don't know what you've been through. I've been through a lot, physically, mentally, spiritually, but I refuse to go back to that hell. I ain't forgot that was hell. This way of life has shown me that we grow up in here. This way of life, coming from smoke-filled meetings to non-smoking meetings, having to not drive. I had to stop driving in April when this bacteria meningitis showed up. Just popped up. I ain't see it coming. Worked all day. Took my wife, Dean, client home. Came back. She told me I lay across the bed in my work clothes. And she said she knew then something was wrong. This is what we sign up for. No matter what, I refuse to use. I'm honest with my doctors today. I let them know I wear a lot of NA stuff. Every time you see me, I might have something on with NA. Because I try to let people know silently that I'm in this fellowship. I have doctors that bump my hand when I walk by and let me know that's a sign of me that they know they're in the fellowship because I respect this field of work. Our literature tells us we do everything. We got lawyers, doctors, rich people, poor people, people that can read, people who can't read. We tell them keep coming back. Because this is one fellowship that it's a must. It's needed. The lady was talking about crack. My director asked me in '86, do I know what crack is? I told him, man, I don't know what that is. I ain't even never heard of it. I'm from Florida. It hadn't got there yet. And I'm grateful because he told me, he said, man, you blessed. Because what I was doing made me put a pistol under my chin and pull the trigger. And the stories I heard about that crack, I didn't want no parts of it. And I wanted people to get off of it. I was telling my wife now, in '99, my oldest daughter, mom, picked up AIDS. Clean cut girl, one of them Sunday school girls. But she was mad at me because I went into the military. She let her friend talking to hooking up with somebody else, and it cost both of them. The gentleman was talking about secular meetings. We struggled getting an African-American meeting in Edenville, Florida in '91. But my sponsee, one of them highly educated people, he was in service and he went there fighting for the right for us to have a meeting, and we say the door is open. You can still come because it's a fellowship of recovery for everybody that want to stop using and find a new way to live. So we won, and that group is still going today. So it's about change. It's about what are you willing to do to change. There's my fancy watch talking, so ignore it.
Let me ask you a question, Harold.
Okay.
Earlier you mentioned that you were doing H&I alone. You said you had a fight at the area service meeting about being called the N-word. Why were you doing H&I by yourself? And how did you end up with H&I? I heard that you were elected as the chair of H&I in Birmingham at your first ASC. Can you tell us a little bit more about that whole experience?
Well, during the time I was still in treatment, H&I didn't have a chairperson, but people were was carrying the message. After I got out of treatment, I got out with time enough to put a position. And like I said, my sponsor, who was in AA, told me he wouldn't sponsor me until I took on a service commitment. And when I went to area, that commitment was open. And I raised my hand to take on that commitment. So they read the qualifications, and I had the qualifications. And the gentleman across the table decided that we didn't need no N-word nigga to do nothing in this fellowship. And I went after him. But like I said, one thing that I truly believe in was we wasn't standing. It was time for them to see our people, to see us stand doing service work and not just getting back on the bus and going back to the treatment center or going to AA. It was time for us to stay in Narcotics Anonymous, because it was real important that I did H&I. It was real important that I let my sponsor tell me what to do back then. It wasn't no ultimatum. You either do it or I'm not going to sponsor. And like I say, I was in that one portion in the basic tech today that talked about what are you willing to do for your recovery. And like I said, I was tired. And I realized I was tired. I started seeing all the signs that I hear about how powerful disease is. It works in different areas. We substitute one addiction for another. All those coming up, coming fast. So, and my circle started growing.
I'm trying to get a picture outside of you, kind of what NA looked like, back in '86, and so it was obvious that there was already NA in Birmingham. That was already a service structure because you did go to ASC from treatment. And you talked about doing H&I by yourself, but you talked about this person, Lawrence, who helped. Was Lawrence instrumental did he help you at all with H&I? Did you start any NA meetings by yourself, or did you have any help from anybody from that area of service? Give me some idea what it was like in the beginning so we can get a historical perspective on what that looked like then and what it might look like now and where it came from. Help us out.
Well, Lawrence was a white man, and we watch people, and Lawrence watched me because I shared in open meetings. I shared all the time. I shared, and when I went to area, and Lawrence saw me sitting across the table and decided to do H&I, he watched me, and I didn't know at first that he was watching. And for the first year and a half, him and Thule and Susie saw me go to meetings on a regular basis. It wasn't a whole lot but it wasn't about 3 or 4 meetings, but I'd always go to South Avondale. And they saw me on a regular basis. They heard me share about my struggles before I got to recovery. And after I got in my brief new segment of recovery, the struggles with sticking with my female counselor. Thule and Susie helped me in that area, because that was a part of what I want to do, because they were two of the ladies that they brought H&I to Alethea House. And so, it grew from there. And one of the things that really I help and understand today is if the service structure is built so that any addict can get this thing if they want it. But you got to come in with an open mind. I heard about ladies sharing, men sharing women, and sponsoring the women. I don't believe in that, even though it was needed back then, because, there wasn't a whole bunch of black women staying in the room. In fact, I don't even know who the first black woman was that stayed in the room in Birmingham. I just know a couple of men that stayed. And I thank God for Terrence, because he knew the people in the city of Birmingham. I was new to Birmingham. So he played an instrumental role in the women's stand.
Let me ask you a thought-provoking question here, Harold. And this is going to be something that many of us might ask ourselves too. And just give me some perspective on what would you tell Harold, a newcomer of 1986, from the Harold of 2022 today? How would you talk to him, and what would you tell this kind of person, man?
I take him to the literature, and first I tell him are you ready? Because this is not easy. It's simple, and people get simple and easy, them two words mixed up. It's simple because all we have to do is don't pick the dope up, or don't go go back around the same people who still using, which is real hard to cut loose. But it's only hard because you still got a reservation. I tell them to get involved with service. Service is the backbone and the key to my recovery, and to anybody who really want this thing. Because it's a blessing to be able to serve the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous on any level. I've done I started out with H&I. Then I became a GSR. Then I became I was on the literature chair committee before World sent it to some outside agency, because I enjoyed going to the literature input committee, because it gave me a chance to give my input, and so I felt special giving input to a committee for a worldwide fellowship, and that's what NA means. And that's what I tell a newcomer. I tell them, say, man, this thing talks about if you want what I got, then do what I do. I do service work.
Is that what you would tell Harold?
That's what I tell Harold. Get in the middle of this thing. People talk about hanging on the edge. Hanging on the edge, you fall off easy. If you get between, my word was, there's an imaginary dot between the N and the A, halfway down, directly in the middle. Lock on to that dot. Put the rope to it.
Harold, I have another question that I really would like to impart, because you know what, you're 2 or 3 time cancer survivor. Yep. You've lost your sight in recovery. You talked about having other illnesses that could have been deadly, and and I know that I'm older than you, so I'm not sure how much time I have left, but it's important that we carry this history. Mm-hmm. And even though your picture won't be there, audio wise, I think it will be helpful to the newcomers in Birmingham, or for us to know, because I live in the South with you, tell me about, is there anyone who is no longer with us who played an integral part, an integral role in your recovery and the growth of NA in Birmingham that you wish to honor by sharing with us about him or her now? Give us some perspective, give us some history, that because it's important. And we don't know, but I don't know whether one has written about the history of NA in Birmingham, but I do realize that Birmingham is the steel city of the South, which is much employment. But I found NA in rural cities in Alabama now, so that had to grow from somewhere. Please tell us about those people who are integral in your recovery and the growth of NA in Birmingham, and how you feel they impacted not only your recovery, but Birmingham's NA. Give us some perspective on that, please.
As I said, Lawrence helped me get H&I started. He was real instrumental. He was on the area service board. And he was one of those highly educated men. But I didn't know what kind of work he did, because our literature tells us it don't make no difference where you come from or what you do. But him, Toolie, and Susie were the first 3 people in Narcotics Anonymous that pulled me to the side and shared with me how important it was for me to keep coming, me to stay involved with service after the fighting, because it was something that they saw being in Birmingham, that we did need another way, and they knew what was stopping us, so. And then, like I say, when Motorcycle Ed pulled me to the side in that convention after he spoke, and he shared his strength and hope, being in a motorcycle club and being separated from normal whites. They kept coming, and it was unbelievable, and so it was one of the things that I kept pressing to blacks in the meeting openly. The importance of staying and changing the way we was living, the men and the women in Birmingham, so it was instrumental to me to start gravitating toward more and more whites, because more and more whites started seeing me stay. More and more whites started going back to H&I. And I had a couple blacks that dragged up in there. I didn't know who they were because they sat in the back. And like I said, I don't believe in sitting in the back, even to this day, unless I absolutely have to. And so that was important to me, that they saw what I had to offer, and they started accepting me in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, because it was a struggle. God knows it was a struggle to be the only black in the meetings a lot of nights, and then other than that, and other than the treatment for people who go out and get back on the van and go back to the treatment facilities, or they go to AA. And I thank God for my sponsor, James. God knows that man would not he would not sponsor me unless I got in the service. And I thank him for it. I truly thank James, because he had a strong network over there also, of blacks and whites, because he was well spoken, and I became like him. I gravitated. He wanted this thing. He went to meetings on a regular basis. He was just, and he talked me into going to meetings on a regular basis, because it was needed. Because like I shared earlier, I was tired. That bullet didn't kill me that time. That using didn't kill me after getting out the hospital, almost killing myself. God had some work for me to do, and I was determined to do it. So I did it on a grateful basis. I wasn't using the word grateful back then, but I did it on a strong desire to change the way I was living, and for for other blacks to change the way they live. You know, because as the lady shared earlier, once that crack hit, it just was like an epidemic. Thank God that I was clean before it hit. But when my director at treatment still asked me about it and told me what it was doing, I just closed my eyes and thank God that that what I did was enough. I didn't need to do nothing else.
Harold, I got another question for you here before we finish this up. You know, in the late 80s, as I was saying earlier, I was living in Bessemer, Alabama, and my girlfriend had a business in downtown Birmingham. And I was involved in NA, and thank you for your efforts, because I was able to attend a meeting, and I think it was 2nd Street or 2nd Avenue, and looked like it might have been an old crack house. It was one of those, what they used to call a shotgun house. It was a wooden house, and you could hit meetings multiple times during the day. And I can remember going to a meeting at a huge church in Birmingham. We had eating meetings there, and it might have been the church that the girls were bombed in back in the civil rights days. So I want to thank you for the effort to starting meetings in Birmingham, because this was in the late 80s when I had positive experiences of going to meetings in Birmingham as well as Atlanta, you know, during those times. But here's my question. What kind of literature was available for you all to get started when you came in, and what did you do? You know, you talked about being involved in the NA, but I just want to get a picture of what literature you have to work with, because it's you're well spoken. You talked about step work, but I just want to get a picture of what that was like, because NA was already established in Birmingham, but it just wasn't African Americans there. Tell us a little bit about the literature, because we're running out of time, and I want to capture that picture too, so that the newcomers will kind of know where you came from and how you can make it in recovery with limited exposure to literature. Can you give us a picture on that, please?
Well, you know, one of the things that I was instrumental in doing was focusing on just a couple of, we didn't have a whole lot of IPs on the table. But like I shared earlier, we had who is an addict, what do you want to do about your problem and how we can help, why am I here? And we had that sponsorship, well, no, the sponsorship pamphlet wasn't out, but we had just for the day. You know, so my total focus was on why, what did I want to do about my problem? And how could I help? How could y'all help me? You know, so that was my total focus. And that little white book, I must have wore out 2 or 3 of them, because everywhere I went, I had it in my back pocket. You know, because because those were in there, and I read them, and I drew lines on under certain things that I could connect with. You know, because it was real important that I showed myself that I had a strong determination to stay clean, that I had a strong determination to carry the message to the African Americans that wanted this thing, you know, because it was just blacks and white, it wasn't no Puerto Ricans, you know, it was just black and white. And I mean, it was a struggle, you know. So we do recover up in here. You know, once we make a decision to turn our wheel and get out, whoever your higher power is, get out of his way. Because the disease of my disease got mad when I made a decision to come to Narcotics Anonymous and let them help me leave him alone. And he started going through my kids. Mm-hmm. And when he started doing that, I had to run back to my sponsor, my new sponsor. And one thing I need to share, man, you know, one of the things that I did a renegade agent at me, because wouldn't nobody help me. You know, we called them renegades back then, you know, and because I was determined to carry the message, you know. So if you're new, stay. If you're new, when you get to, you ain't got to have 9 months. We don't make coffee no more, but go in there and set the chairs up. Mm-hmm. Stay to the meeting and take down the chairs. go out to fellowship after the meeting, because that's what works. You know, and how it works, it talks about how it works. One addict can best understand and help another addict. And if you get a sponsor, get somebody who ain't gonna put your business in the street. Because I went through a lot of that too. So, man, my other sponsor told my business. Well, on the good side, you ain't got no business. But on the real side, he ain't have no business going out sharing what you share with him. Because that ran a lot of people back out there. And it's still running them out there today. You know, because people are afraid to let people sponsor them. You know, in the new sponsorship IP, we talk about getting a sponsor in the rooms, getting some counseling if needed. Hell, I had to get counseling. You know, because this thing was a whole lot stronger than I was. You know, but my determination.
So Harold, we get ready to wrap it up, and I have one final question as we go out with this. And this has been an amazing opportunity to have a fireside chat with you, and you carry so much information, and I get a great picture of what your life is like and what it's been like throughout your recovery. But Harold, you know, after 36 years, you know, what does Harold's picture look like? Do you live in Birmingham now? Are you still living in Florida? Are you still carrying the message? Are you still involved in Narcotics Anonymous? Kind of summarize and take us out with where you are now in recovery. And we only have a few minutes, but let's just get a picture of where that whole thing happened, where your mother put you on a bus and sent you to detox. And obviously you're in that no matter what club, man, because, you know, think about cancer, and I think you said meningitis, and I know you didn't talk about it, but I remember a strong wife that you had when you were living in Florida who passed away while you were clean, and now you remarried. You say you married your childhood sweetheart. Just give us a picture of what Harold is like now and where that journey has taken you. And by the way, I just want to thank you for your time and your effort, and I want to acknowledge that I've lived with a cancer patient. You know, my wife died from cancer, but I know what it's like when a person has been on constant chemotherapy, and I know it's cumulative. And I know you had an infusion yesterday, but you had the determination to come here today, and I want to thank you for that, because that in itself. You know, we have, some people have excuses for not showing up, but I haven't seen your excuse yet. But give us a picture of who you are now and what your recovery is like, and close us out with this, please, because we only have a few minutes. Thank you again, Harold.
You're so welcome. In December 2020, I married my college sweetheart. You know, she knew what I was going through that first bout of cancer, and I was basically at the end of it. But thank God she worked in the nursing field, and you know, I had a daughter who worked in the nursing field, and like I said, I married in December of 2020. I married my college sweetheart, and I started going to meetings up here because we still had a couple of open meetings up here, and
Where's up here?
in Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay, thank you.
I moved up here because this is where she lived, in a family house, and it's been a blessing in itself. You know, it's been a struggle sometimes, but it's been a blessing also. It's been a blessing more than anything, you know, because her circle of friends have accepted me. I carry a message up here just like anywhere else. You know, on the phone, I can see I got special phones because I'm blind. But people be telling me, man, you sure you blind? I said, yeah, you don't want no phone like this one. I know that much. You know, because it talks. I had to cut it off, cut it on mute. At first, I had to find out how to work it. You know, but I thank God that she's instrumental in my recovery today, and she supports my meeting. She had to set me up on Zoom. You know, she had to set me up in meetings. Now I know how to touch the button to cut it off, but that's it. You know, because I can find the button on the left hand side at the top. But you know, the last house on the block. You know, and my home group here is the last house on the block, and that's what it's called. And it's packed every Tuesday and every Friday night. I'm not able to go to indoor meetings right now because of the second bout of cancer that attacked me, and it's called lesion. They found 2 lesions in the hip area, but I'm able to. Hey, I got my first ride in the car last month, and that was a blessing, man. It was like a joy to be able to ride in the car. I use a walker, a four-legged walker in my house to get around the house, you know. But through Narcotics Anonymous, I've learned to be humble, you know, and that's what I share today. How important it is to be humble, because my disease still wants to kill me. It wants to get to the people closest to me, and it wants me to carry the message.
You carried an amazing message today, and we're so grateful. Thank you so much. I'm just so grateful for this segment.